Captain Zara Mitchell stands frozen as airline executives file into the boardroom, their faces ashen. Behind her, screens display company-wide emails exposing decades of racial discrimination. "You asked me to wait outside," she says calmly. "Now watch as your entire airline crumbles from within." Before we dive into this powerful story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If this kind of story about overcoming injustice speaks to you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about people fighting back against discrimination. Now let's go back to the beginning and discover how Captain Zara Mitchell went from being told to wait outside to bringing an entire airline company to its knees. 8-year-old Zara Mitchell stood at the airport observation deck, her small hands pressed against the glass as she watched planes take off into the endless blue sky. Her grandfather, retired Air Force Colonel William Mitchell, placed his weathered hand on her shoulder. "You know, I never thought I'd see the day when black folks could fly any plane they wanted," he said, his voice carrying the weight of history. "When I was a Tuskegee airman, they said we couldn't fly, said our brains weren't built for it." He chuckled, the sound warm despite the bitter memory. "Look at those planes now. Any one of them could be yours someday." Zara nodded solemnly, making a promise to herself and her grandfather that day she would fly. Not just any planes, but the biggest, most impressive aircraft in the sky. 26 years later, Captain Zara Mitchell stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her pilot's uniform with precision. The 4 gold stripes on her sleeves caught the light, symbols of the rank she had earned through years of dedication, sacrifice, and excellence. At 34, she was one of the youngest captains at Atlantic Skyways, one of America's largest commercial airlines. More significantly, she was one of only 12 black female captains in the entire commercial aviation industry. The journey hadn't been easy. After graduating at the top of her class from the Air Force Academy, Zara had served 8 distinguished years as a military pilot, including 2 tours flying transport missions in combat zones. Her record was impeccable, her skills beyond question. When she transitioned to civilian aviation 3 years ago, Atlantic Skyways had featured her hiring prominently in their diversity campaign. "Bringing the best talent to the skies," the press release had quoted CEO Lawrence Patterson saying, beneath a photo of him shaking Zara's hand. The memory now left a bitter taste in her mouth. Zara's husband Anthony, a brilliant software engineer who worked from home, appeared in the mirror behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist, careful not to wrinkle her perfectly pressed uniform. "Captain Mitchell reporting for duty," he said with a proud smile. "How does it feel starting? International routes today?" Zara allowed herself a small smile. After 2 years of domestic flights, she had finally been assigned to the prestigious Paris route, a coveted assignment usually reserved for pilots with far more seniority at the airline. "Feels like I've earned it," she replied, turning to kiss him goodbye. "Maybe now they'll start seeing me as a pilot, not just a diversity statistic." Anthony's smile faltered slightly. "You're the best pilot they have, Zara. Never forget that." 3 hours later, Zara strode confidently through Atlantic Skyways Operations Center at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. She nodded professionally to colleagues, her pilot's bag slung over her shoulder, heading to the briefing room for her Paris flight. "Captain Mitchell." The voice stopped her. It belonged to Walter Brennan, a 60-year-old captain who had made his disdain for female pilots clear on numerous occasions. "Heard you got Paris. Pretty plum assignment for someone with your limited experience." Zara maintained her professional composure. "My qualifications speak for themselves, Captain Brennan. 8 years military, over 5,000 flight hours, including 2 years at Atlantic." Brennan's smile didn't reach his eyes. Sure. I'm just saying some of us worked years for those routes. Interesting how quickly some people move up these days." The implication was clear. In Brennan's mind, and likely others, Zara had received the assignment because of her race and gender, not her qualifications. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. Excusing herself, she checked the notification. The message was from scheduling. "Route change. Paris canceled. Report to Gate B22 for Charlotte Shuttle. Effective immediately." Zara stared at her phone in disbelief. No explanation, no apology, just reassigned from an international prestige route to a short-haul domestic shuttle with barely an hour's notice. As she looked up, she caught Brennan smirking before he turned away. At the scheduling office, Tanya Williams, a black woman in her mid-40s who worked in HR, gave Zara an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, Captain Mitchell. The decision came from operations. They said they needed someone with more experience for Paris." "And who got the assignment instead?" Zara asked, already suspecting the answer. Tanya hesitated before responding. "Captain Peter Whitfield." Zara kept her expression neutral despite the frustration boiling inside her. Whitfield had been hired 6 months after her and had fewer total flight hours. The only real difference was that he was a white male. "I see," was all Zara said, turning to leave. "Zara," Tanya called softly, using her first name and glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "This isn't the first time I've seen this happen." Their eyes met in silent understanding before Zara nodded and left to prepare for her newly assigned flight. As she walked toward her new gate, she passed James Sullivan, the chief operations officer, a tall white man in his 50s, with cold blue eyes who viewed diversity as nothing more than a necessary public relations exercise. "Captain Mitchell," he acknowledged with a curt nod. "Schedule changes happen all the time in this business. Hope you understand we need our most experienced people on international routes." "Of course, sir," Zara replied professionally, "though I do wonder about the selection criteria given my background." Sullivan's smile tightened. "We value your contribution, Mitchell. The Charlotte route is important too." As he walked away, Zara noticed Captain Richard Coleman, a 62-year-old white pilot nearing retirement, watching the exchange with a thoughtful expression. Unlike most of the old guard, Coleman had always treated her with respect. "Don't let them get to you, Mitchell," he said quietly as he approached. "For what it's worth, you're twice the pilot most of these jokers are, including Whitfield." "Thank you, sir," Zara replied, genuinely appreciative of the rare show of support. Coleman lowered his voice. "This isn't right what they're doing. Never has been." Before she could ask what he meant, Coleman was called away, leaving Zara to wonder if her experience was part of a larger pattern. That evening, as Zara recounted the day's events to Anthony over dinner, she couldn't shake the feeling that what happened wasn't just bad luck or typical airline operations. "It's like they showcased me for their diversity reports but never actually intended to let me fly the routes I deserve," she said, pushing her food around her plate. Anthony reached across the table for her hand. "Maybe it was just a one-time thing." Zara shook her head. "I don't think so. The look Tanya gave me, what Coleman said. I think this has happened before." She pulled out her laptop and began creating a spreadsheet. "I'm going to track every assignment, every schedule change. If there's a pattern, I'll find it." Anthony watched her with concern. "Just be careful, Zara. These big corporations don't like being challenged." Zara looked up, determination hardening her features. "And I don't like being disrespected or discriminated against. If that's what's happening, they picked the wrong pilot to mess with." 6 months had passed since Zara's Paris route had been reassigned, and what initially seemed like an isolated incident had morphed into an undeniable pattern. Seated at her home office desk, Zara stared at the spreadsheet displayed on her computer screen, the data painting a picture she couldn't ignore. Over the past 6 months, she had been scheduled for 8 international flights. 7 had been reassigned to white male pilots at the last minute. The domestic routes she received were predominantly to smaller regional airports, despite her seniority over several white pilots who consistently received premium routes to major hubs. Zara rubbed her temples, fighting off a headache. The numbers didn't lie. She picked up her phone and called Tanya from HR. "I need to talk to you," Zara said when Tanya answered. "Not at the office." They met at a small coffee shop 10 miles from the airport, away from the eyes and ears of their colleagues. Tanya arrived looking nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. "I shouldn't be here," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "If Sullivan found out." "I've been tracking my assignments," Zara said, sliding her tablet across the table, displaying the spreadsheet. Look at the pattern. Tanya glanced at the data and sighed. I've seen similar patterns before, Zara. It's why I tried to warn you. Has anyone ever filed a formal complaint? Tanya's laugh was hollow. 3 times in the 5 years I've been in HR, all 3 employees were eventually pushed out. Sudden performance issues, schedule changes that made their lives impossible, or they were just worn down until they quit. That's illegal, Zara stated flatly. It's also nearly impossible to prove, Tanya countered. Atlantic Skyways has very good lawyers and they're careful. There's always a plausible explanation for every decision. The next day, Zara requested a meeting with her direct supervisor, Brad Thompson, a former pilot now working in operations management. When she entered his office, she found him reviewing flight logs with a disinterested expression. Captain Mitchell, he greeted without looking up. What can I do for you? I'd like to discuss my route assignments, Zara said, taking a seat across from him. Brad finally looked up, annoyance flashing across his face. What about them? I've noticed a pattern of being removed from international routes and assigned primarily to smaller regional airports, despite my seniority and qualifications. Brad leaned back in his chair. Route assignments are based on numerous factors, Mitchell. Seniority is just one consideration. And what are the others? Zara pressed. Because based on experience, flight hours, and performance reviews, I should be flying premium routes regularly. Look, Brad said, his tone condescending. This is how the airline business works. Everyone pays their dues. Maybe you're just being a bit sensitive about this. The word sensitive hung in the air between them, loaded with implication. I've been paying my dues since I earned my wings in the Air Force, Zara replied evenly. I'm simply asking for fair treatment based on my qualifications. Brad's expression hardened. Are you suggesting there's some kind of discrimination happening, Mitchell? Because that's a serious accusation. I'm asking for clarity on how assignments are determined, Zara said carefully. Because the current pattern doesn't align with any merit-based system I can identify. Noted, Brad said dismissively. Is there anything else? Zara left the meeting feeling frustrated but more determined than ever. In the pilot's lounge later that day, she noticed how conversations quieted when she entered, only to resume once she passed. She'd grown accustomed to the subtle exclusion, but now she was more attuned to it. As she prepared her flight plan, Sarah Chen, an Asian-American flight attendant she'd worked with several times, approached her. Heard you talk to Thompson about assignments, Sarah said quietly, sitting beside her. Zara looked up, surprised. Word travels fast, Sarah nodded. I've been with Atlantic for 7 years, used to be a chief purser on international routes. Then I filed a complaint about harassment from a senior pilot. What happened? Suddenly my performance reviews tanked. I was demoted to domestic routes and eventually lost my chief purser status. Sarah's eyes held a warning. They don't fight fair, Captain Mitchell. Did you ever consider legal action? Zara asked. Sarah's bitter laugh was answer enough. With what resources? Against their legal team? Besides, they're careful. There's always just enough plausible deniability. Over the next few weeks, Zara became more strategic. She documented everything meticulously, recording conversations when legal, saving emails and texts, and continuing to track assignment patterns. One evening in the airport parking garage, she overheard 2 white pilots discussing their upcoming schedules. Can't believe I got Paris again, said the first, a pilot named Brian Wilson, who had been hired a year after Zara. That's 3 times, this quarter. Sullivan likes you, replied the second pilot with a laugh. Says you're the right image for the airline's premier routes. Better than sending Mitchell, I guess. Sullivan practically had a fit when scheduling put her on Paris that time. Zara remained hidden behind a concrete pillar, her suspicions confirmed. This wasn't happenstance or coincidence. This was deliberate. The next day, she expanded her data collection, reaching out to other minority pilots and flight crew members discreetly. The stories were remarkably similar across the board. Minority staff were consistently assigned less desirable routes, passed over for promotions, and subjected to higher scrutiny than their white counterparts. After 2 weeks of gathering evidence, Zara received an email requesting her presence at a meeting with Gregory Maxwell, the Vice President of Operations and James Sullivan's direct subordinate. The subject line read simply, "Performance Discussion." Zara forwarded the email to her personal account, a sense of foreboding settling over her. She had pushed, and now Atlantic Skyways was pushing back. The question was, how far were they willing to go? And more importantly, how far was she willing to go to fight them? That night, she discussed the situation with Anthony. "Maybe it's time to consider legal options," he suggested, concern evident in his voice. Zara shook her head. "Not yet. I need more concrete evidence. They'll just say it's all coincidence, or operational necessity." "And if they take action against you?" Zara's expression hardened with resolve. "Then they'll only prove my point, and I'll make sure everyone knows it." The executive conference room at Atlantic Skyways headquarters exuded power and privilege. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the airport runways, while the polished mahogany table gleamed under recessed lighting. Zara sat straight-backed, in her chair, uniform impeccable, facing Gregory Maxwell across the imposing table. Maxwell, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a politician's smile, had the practiced charm of someone who had spent decades in corporate America. Next to him sat an HR representative Zara didn't recognize, not Tanya Williams. "Captain Mitchell," Maxwell began cordially, "thank you for joining us today. We just wanted to touch base about a few concerns that have come to our attention." "What concerns would those be?" Zara asked directly. Maxwell's smile remained fixed. "Well, there's been some chatter that you're unhappy with your route assignments, that you feel they're somehow unfair." The way he emphasized unfair carried a subtle warning. "I've been gathering data on route assignments across our pilot roster," Zara replied evenly, placing a folder on the table. "The patterns are concerning." Maxwell didn't touch the folder. "Routes are assigned based on complex operational factors, Captain Mitchell. It's not as simple as seniority or flight hours." "I'm aware of the complexity," Zara countered. "I'm also aware that white male pilots with less experience and lower seniority than me consistently receive premium routes, while I'm routinely reassigned to less desirable ones." The HR representative scribbled something in her notepad, as Maxwell's smile tightened fractionally. "That's a serious implication, Captain. Are you formally alleging discrimination?" It was a trap, and Zara knew it. A formal allegation would trigger a process entirely controlled by the company, likely designed to dismiss her concerns while documenting her as a troublemaker. "I'm presenting data and asking for transparency," Zara replied carefully. "These assignment patterns affect not just me, but other minority pilots as well." Maxwell leaned forward, his tone shifting to one of concern. "Zara, may I call you Zara? I understand the pressures of being a pilot. It's a stressful position, especially for someone still relatively new to commercial aviation." The patronizing tone made Zara's jaw tighten, but she maintained her composure. "My military experience more than compensates for my time in commercial aviation, and my performance reviews have been exemplary," she stated. "This isn't about stress or capability." Of course, Maxwell backpedaled smoothly. "I'm simply suggesting that perhaps you're misinterpreting the data, seeing patterns where there are simply standard operational decisions." Zara pushed the folder closer to him. "The numbers speak for themselves. In the past 6 months, I've been removed from international routes 7 times, always in favor of white male pilots with less experience. My domestic routes are predominantly to smaller airports, despite my seniority over several pilots who consistently receive major hub routes." Maxwell finally picked up the folder, glancing at it dismissively before closing it again. "I appreciate your thoroughness, Captain Mitchell, but I think you're missing the broader operational context. Flying is a complex business with many variables." "Then enlighten me," Zara challenged. "What variables justify these specific patterns?" The HR representative cleared her throat. "Captain Mitchell, we value diversity at Atlantic Skyways. Your contributions are important to us. If you're experiencing stress or feeling overwhelmed..." I'm neither stressed nor overwhelmed, Zara interrupted firmly. I'm identifying a systematic issue affecting multiple employees based on race and gender. Maxwell's friendly facade slipped momentarily, revealing a flash of annoyance. Captain Mitchell, let me be direct. These kinds of accusations, without understanding the full operational picture, can damage careers. I'd hate to see that happen to someone with your potential. The threat was thinly veiled, but Zara refused to be intimidated. I'm simply presenting data and asking questions, she replied. If Atlantic Skyways values diversity as claimed, then examining these patterns should be a priority, not a threat. The meeting ended shortly thereafter, with Maxwell promising to look into the matter, while strongly suggesting Zara focus on her flying duties rather than administrative concerns. What did you think of Zara's handling of this confrontation? Comment number 1 if you believe she was right to stand firm with evidence, or number 2 if you think she should have approached it differently. Don't forget to hit that like button if you admire her courage, and subscribe to follow her journey. How do you think Atlantic Skyways will respond to Zara's challenge? Will they address her concerns or find ways to silence her? Let's find out. 2 days later, Zara was in the cockpit of a Boeing 737, expertly navigating through a line of severe thunderstorms that had developed unexpectedly along their route from Atlanta to Denver. Beside her, First Officer Jason Reed watched with barely concealed amazement as she calmly adjusted their course, coordinating with air traffic control while maintaining a smooth flight despite the turbulence. That's some impressive flying, Captain, Reed commented as they emerged from the worst of the weather. Most captains would have diverted. The corridor to the north was navigable, Zara replied, eyes still scanning her instruments. No need to inconvenience passengers if we can safely maintain course. Reed nodded, then added with a hint of condescension. Must be that military training. You people are always so by the book. Zara glanced at him briefly. You people? Reed flushed slightly. Military pilots, I mean. Always so precise. The cockpit fell silent except for routine communications with ATC. After landing in Denver, executing a textbook touchdown despite gusty crosswinds, Zara completed her post-flight procedures and headed to the crew lounge to prepare for the return leg. When she opened her locker, a slip of paper fell out. On it, scrawled in block letters, "Diversity hire, stay in your lane." Zara stared at the note, her face betraying nothing, even as her heart pounded. She carefully placed it in a plastic sleeve and tucked it into her flight bag. One more piece of evidence. Back in Atlanta that evening, she went directly to HR to report the incident. To her dismay, Tanya Williams wasn't there. Instead, she was directed to Heather Morrison, the same HR representative who had been in the meeting with Maxwell. This is concerning, of course, Heather said without much conviction after Zara showed her the note. But unfortunately, without knowing who placed it there. There are security cameras in the crew areas, Zara pointed out, which would require a formal security investigation, Heather replied. For a note that, while inappropriate, doesn't, contain explicit threats. It's a clear instance of racial harassment, Zara insisted. Heather's smile was placating. We take these matters seriously, Captain Mitchell, but we need to follow protocol. I'll file a report, but without witnesses or clear evidence of who left the note, there's limited action we can take. Leaving the HR office, Zara felt a familiar frustration building. That evening, she called her friend Yvonne Baker, an attorney, who specialized in employment discrimination cases. They're building a paper trail, Yvonne warned after hearing about the meeting with Maxwell. The sudden performance discussion, the dismissive response to your evidence, the HR representative minimizing the harassment. They're documenting you as difficult while creating plausible deniability for themselves. So what do I do? Zara asked. Document everything, Yvonne advised. Record conversations when legal, keep copies of all communications, maintain your data spreadsheet, and start considering whether you're willing to take legal action, because that may become your only recourse. The next morning, Zara found an anonymous email in her personal account, sent through a temporary email service. You're not alone. Others are watching. Be careful who you trust. Check your locker tomorrow. Zara stared at the cryptic message, unsure whether it was a threat or an offer of support. When she checked her locker the following day, she found a small USB drive taped inside. That evening, with Anthony looking over her shoulder, she cautiously plugged it into a dedicated laptop they used for security-sensitive matters. The drive contained dozens of internal emails between Sullivan, Maxwell, and other executives, discussing route assignments with explicit references to keeping diversity hires away from premium customer routes. There were performance reviews that had been altered after submission, and schedules showing systematic patterns of discrimination across multiple minority employees. "This is explosive," Anthony whispered. "But how do you use it without revealing your source?" Before Zara could answer, her phone rang. It was Richard Coleman, the older white captain who had shown her support. "Mitchell, I heard about your meeting with Maxwell," he said without preamble. "Be careful. They're scheduling a random simulator check for you next week. Word is they're looking for any reason to put a letter in your file." "How do you know this?" Zara asked. Coleman hesitated. "Let's just say not everyone at Atlantic agrees with how things are being run. Watch your back, Mitchell. They play dirty." The next day, Zara arrived at headquarters for a routine briefing. As she approached the conference room, she noticed several of her white male colleagues already inside, chatting comfortably with James Sullivan. When she tried to enter, the receptionist stopped her. "I'm sorry, Captain Mitchell. Mr. Sullivan asked if you could wait outside until they're ready for you." Zara stood frozen, watching through the glass as her colleagues, all white men, participated in a meeting she had also been summoned to attend. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. Wait outside. Know your place. In that moment, something crystallized within Zara Mitchell. This wasn't just about her career anymore. This was about justice, about challenging a system designed to exclude people like her regardless of their qualifications or contributions. "Actually," she said to the receptionist, straightening her uniform jacket, "I believe I'll go in now. I was invited to this meeting after all." As she pushed open the door, Sullivan looked up, momentary surprise crossing his face before he masked it with a tight smile. "Ah, Captain Mitchell," he said smoothly. "We were just about to call you in." "How convenient," Zara replied evenly, taking the only remaining seat at the table. "I wouldn't want to miss anything important by waiting outside." The challenge in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. Sullivan's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing that the pilot sitting before him had just declared war. The coffee shop 3 miles from the airport was small and nondescript, the kind of place where faces were forgotten as soon as they left. Zara sat in a corner booth, her back to the wall, watching the door. Her meeting with attorney Yvonne Baker had left her with a clearer picture of the challenges ahead, none of them encouraging. Systemic discrimination cases are notoriously difficult to prove, Yvonne had explained. Companies like Atlantic Skyways have sophisticated legal teams and years of experience covering their tracks. They'll claim operational necessity, performance issues, or simple coincidence. "Even with the data I've collected?" Zara had asked. "It's a start, but they'll have counter-explanations for every pattern you identify. We need more concrete evidence, linking the discriminatory outcomes directly to intentional policies or decisions." Now, waiting in the coffee shop, Zara wondered if she was making a mistake. The anonymous email she'd received after finding the USB drive had requested this meeting, promising more information, but warning of risks. The bell above the door jingled, and a woman in an Atlantic Skyways ground crew uniform entered. She scanned the room before spotting Zara and approaching cautiously. "Captain Mitchell?" she asked quietly. Zara nodded, gesturing to the seat across from her. "I'm Aisha Washington," the woman said, sliding into the booth. "I supervise the flight attendant, scheduling for international routes. You sent the emails?" Zara asked. Aisha shook her head. "Not me specifically. There are several of us who've been watching what's happening to you. What's been happening to all of us for years." "Who's us?" "People who are tired of being treated as second-class employees because of our race or gender," Aisha replied. "We've been documenting things quietly, but no one's had the courage or position to really challenge them. Until you. Zara studied the woman carefully. How do I know this isn't a setup? That you're not reporting back to Sullivan or Maxwell? You don't, Aisha admitted. But ask yourself this. Who provided that USB drive? Who warned you about the simulator check? There are people inside Atlantic who want things to change, but are afraid to stand up alone. Before Zara could respond, 2 more people approached their table. One was a Latino man in his 40s, wearing a mechanic's uniform with the name Torres embroidered on it. The other was an Asian American man in business casual attire who introduced himself as David Kim, a dispatcher. "We need to be careful," Michael Torres said after they were seated. "They've started watching people who associate with you too closely." "How many of you are there?" Zara asked, still wary but increasingly intrigued. "Enough," David replied. "Across multiple departments. We've all experienced similar treatment, but the company's been clever about keeping us isolated, making each case seem unique." For the next hour, they shared stories that painted a disturbing picture of systemic discrimination throughout Atlantic. Skyways. Michael Torres, despite an impeccable record as a maintenance supervisor, had been passed over for promotion 5 times in favor of less qualified white colleagues. David Kim had documentation showing minority pilots consistently receiving less desirable schedules with shorter rest periods between flights. Aisha detailed how minority flight attendants were disproportionately assigned to domestic routes rather than more lucrative international ones. "We've been calling ourselves the Sky Justice Coalition," Aisha explained. "Informally, of course." "What exactly are you hoping to accomplish?" Zara asked. "Change," Michael said simply. "Real, lasting change in how Atlantic operates. But we need someone with credibility and position to help lead the charge." "Someone like a captain," David added meaningfully. Zara considered their proposal carefully. "What you're suggesting comes with significant risk. Atlantic will do everything possible to discredit and remove anyone who challenges them." "They're already targeting you," Aisha pointed out. "The question is whether you fight alone or with allies." Over the following weeks, the coalition grew as Zara was cautiously introduced to other employees who had experienced or witnessed discrimination. Each brought pieces of evidence, emails, schedule records, performance reviews that had been altered, and testimonials about discriminatory comments from management. Working with meticulous care, they compiled and organized the evidence, building how, a comprehensive case that was harder to dismiss as coincidence or misunderstanding. Zara continued her exemplary performance as a pilot, knowing any slight mistake would be magnified and used against her. One evening, as she was reviewing coalition documents in a quiet corner of the airport, Richard Coleman approached her table. "Mind if I join you, Mitchell?" he asked. Zara quickly closed her laptop. "Not at all, Captain Coleman." Coleman sat heavily, looking around to ensure they weren't overheard. "I know what you're doing," he said quietly, "and I want to help." Zara maintained a neutral expression. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Cut the crap, Mitchell," Coleman said with a hint of a smile. "I've been with Atlantic for 38 years. I've seen how they operate. I've been part of the problem by staying silent too long." "Why would you risk getting involved now?" Zara asked cautiously. Coleman's expression turned somber. "My daughter-in-law is black. My grandchildren are mixed race. I want them to have a fair shot in whatever career they choose. I can't change the past, but I can try to influence the future." "What kind of help are you offering?" "Access," Coleman replied. "I'm on the senior pilot committee. I have access to the complete scheduling database going back 15 years, including the executive annotations that don't appear in the regular system." Zara's pulse quickened. "That would be significant." Coleman nodded. "More than you know. There are comments and directives in those annotations that make their intentions crystal clear. Sullivan and his cronies have been systematically keeping minority pilots away from certain routes for years, especially where they have high-value corporate clients." 2 days later, Zara met with the core coalition members in a hotel conference room they had booked under David's name. Coleman had provided a secure flash drive containing 15 years of scheduling data, including the executive annotations. David, who had a background in data analysis before becoming a dispatcher, presented his findings to the stunned group. "The pattern is undeniable," he explained, displaying charts on his laptop. "White male pilots are 3 times more likely to be assigned premium international routes than equally or better qualified minority pilots. The disparity increases for female minority pilots, who are 5 times less likely to receive these assignments." "But here's where it gets damning," he continued, pulling up a series of annotated schedules. "Look at these executive comments." The group leaned forward to read the notes attached to various scheduling decisions. "Maintain appropriate flight deck representation for ME routes, Sullivan Directive. Route 47 services premium banking clients, standard crew profile requested. Diversity placement acceptable for domestic only. International requires traditional representation." "These are smoking guns," Yvonne Baker said when Zara showed her the evidence. These annotations directly link discriminatory outcomes to intentional policy. As the coalition's evidence mounted, they began preparing for the next phase, formal action. They drafted a comprehensive complaint documenting the systematic discrimination at Atlantic Skyways, ready to submit to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the Department of Transportation. Then came an unexpected breakthrough. Tanya Williams, the HR representative who had initially warned Zara, requested a private meeting. "They're on to you," Tanya said without preamble when they met in a park miles from the airport. "Sullivan has instructed HR to begin building a case for your termination. Performance issues, insubordination, anything they can document." "Why are you telling me this?" Zara asked. Tanya looked exhausted, the weight of years of complicity evident in her expression. "Because I've been part of this system too long. I've watched them push out good people because they didn't fit the Atlantic image. I've processed the paperwork, accepted the explanations, told myself I was just doing my job." She handed Zara a thumb drive. Internal HR documents, emails, between Sullivan and HR directors instructing us how to handle discrimination complaints, templates for building performance cases against employees who raise concerns. It's all there. "This could cost you your job," Zara said. "Probably," Tanya agreed. "But I have to live with myself too." That evening, as Zara added Tanya's documents to the coalition's growing case file, she received an email notification on her work account. Subject: Performance Review and Potential Disciplinary Action. The meeting was scheduled for Monday morning with James Sullivan himself. Atlantic Skyways was making its move. Now Zara and the coalition would have to decide whether to play defense or go on the offensive. The simulator hummed softly as Zara adjusted her seat, running through her pre-flight checks with practiced precision. Evaluator Frank Reynolds watched from behind, his expression unreadable. This random simulator check had been scheduled with suspicious timing, just 3 days after her confrontation with Maxwell. "Today's scenario will test emergency procedures under unusual circumstances," Reynolds explained, his tone professionally neutral. "We'll be evaluating your decision-making and technical execution." Zara nodded, focusing on the instruments before her. She had aced every simulator check in her career, both military and civilian. This would be no different, despite the obvious attempt to find fault with her performance. The simulation began with a routine takeoff from LaGuardia. 20 minutes into the simulated flight, multiple cascading failures began. First hydraulic, then electrical, followed by unexpected weather conditions far more severe than anything typically included in standard checks. Zara's training kicked in. She methodically worked through the emergency checklists, prioritizing critical systems while maintaining aircraft control and communications. The scenario was clearly designed to overwhelm, throwing combinations of failures that would rarely, if ever, occur simultaneously in real life. After 90 intense minutes, Zara successfully landed the simulated aircraft with minimal damage under nearly impossible conditions. She exhaled slowly, knowing she had performed flawlessly despite the deliberately excessive challenges. Reynolds made notes without comment, then finally looked up. "Your handling of the initial hydraulic failure was delayed by approximately 7 seconds beyond optimal response time." Zara stared at him in disbelief. "That's within normal parameters for multiple failure scenarios. Atlantic Skyways expects optimal response in all situations, Reynolds replied, continuing to write. Additionally, your fuel management during the diversion showed inefficient decision-making. I maintained the required reserves while prioritizing a safe landing location, Zara countered, keeping her voice level despite her growing anger. Reynolds continued as if she hadn't spoken. I'll be noting areas for improvement in situational awareness and emergency management. A copy will be placed in your file. 2 days later, Zara was captain on a flight to Chicago during a major storm system. The flight required careful navigation through rapidly changing weather patterns, with safety as the absolute priority. Zara's military experience had included extensive severe weather flying, and she handled the challenging conditions with exceptional skill. After landing safely in Chicago, passengers commented to flight attendants about the remarkably smooth flight despite the terrible weather. Yet when Zara returned to Atlanta, she found an email from operations criticizing her excessive fuel consumption and unnecessarily conservative routing. The pattern continued over the following weeks. Every flight, no matter how well executed, received some form of criticism. Minor issues that would be overlooked for other pilots became documented problems in her file. Simultaneously, her schedule changed again, assigning her to the most undesirable routes with minimum rest periods between flights, often requiring middle-of-the-night departures and complex multi-leg journeys. The coalition continued gathering, evidence now documenting the clear pattern of retaliation. David Kim discovered internal emails discussing quality concerns regarding minority pilots, with specific focus on Zara. Michael Torres found maintenance records where minor issues on Zara's aircraft had been flagged for extensive documentation, while similar or worse issues on other aircraft were handled routinely, without special notation. Then the pressure expanded beyond the workplace. Anthony called Zara during a layover in Phoenix, his voice tight with concern. Something strange happened today, he said. My team lead called me in for an unexpected review, said they're concerned about my focus lately, mentioned that my connection to outside issues might be affecting my work. That's not subtle, Zara replied, anger building. They're sending a message. It gets worse. I found out our neighbor Harold works for a law firm that represents Atlantic's insurance company. Yesterday, he was asking odd questions about our finances, whether we could afford a long period without your income. The implications were clear. Atlantic Skyways was extending its intimidation beyond the workplace, using whatever connections and leverage it could find to pressure Zara through her husband. More concerning developments followed. Zara's phone began showing signs of potential compromise, with battery draining rapidly and occasional strange behavior. Twice she noticed the same car parked near their home on different days. The message was clear: we're watching you. The coalition was forced to adopt more secure communications methods, using encrypted messaging apps and meeting in unpredictable locations. Richard Coleman, who had provided crucial access to the scheduling database, found himself suddenly reassigned to less desirable routes as well, a clear punishment for his perceived alliance with Zara. They're watching who talks to you, Coleman told her during a brief, careful conversation between flights. Anyone seen as supportive is being isolated or pressured. Despite the escalating intimidation, the coalition continued building their case. Aisha Washington provided passenger satisfaction surveys, showing Zara consistently received excellent ratings, contradicting the manufactured performance concerns. David Kim completed his statistical analysis proving discrimination across all departments, with minority employees receiving measurably worse assignments, fewer promotions, and more disciplinary actions than their white counterparts with similar or lesser qualifications. Then came the most blatant attack yet. Zara received an official notice of suspension pending investigation for safety concerns. The allegations were vague, referring to patterns of judgment issues and concerns raised by multiple sources. Her security access was temporarily revoked, and she was instructed to surrender her company ID. That evening, a somber emergency meeting of the coalition took place at Yvonne Baker's law office. This is textbook retaliation, Yvonne explained. They're creating a paper trail to justify termination while trying to isolate you from potential allies and evidence. They've put me on unpaid leave, Zara said, the financial implications settling in. We have savings, but not indefinitely. Anthony took her hand. We'll manage. This is too important to back down now. The question is timing, Michael Torres said. Do we file our complaint now, or continue gathering evidence while they think they're winning? The coalition debated strategy late into the night. Filing immediately would provide some protection against further retaliation, but might limit their ability to collect additional evidence. Waiting might allow for a stronger case but increase the risk to Zara's career and financial stability. As they discussed options, Zara received a text from an unknown number. Check your email, urgent. Her personal email contained a message with no text, only an attached audio file. When she played it for the group, they heard the unmistakable voice of James Sullivan speaking to several other executives. Mitchell has become a problem that needs to be permanently resolved. We've started the documentation process, but I want to accelerate it. Find whatever you need to in her record. If it's not there, create it. I want her license at risk, not just her job. We need to make an example of her so others understand the consequences of this kind of agitation. A second voice, recognizable as Gregory Maxwell. What about the others she's been meeting with? We have reports of at least 5 employees. Sullivan again. Once we finish with Mitchell, the others will fall in line or follow her out the door. No one challenges Atlantic Skyways and continues flying. No one. Yvonne Baker looked at the stunned faces around the table. That's your smoking gun. Clear evidence of intentional retaliation and conspiracy to fabricate performance issues. Who sent this? Anthony asked. Someone with access to executive meetings, Aisha surmised. The circle of potential allies may be wider than we thought. The recording solidified their resolve. They would continue building their case while preparing for the inevitable escalation from Atlantic Skyways. The company had shown its hand, revealing just how far it was willing to go to maintain its discriminatory practices and silence those who challenged them. For Zara, the stakes had become crystal clear. This wasn't just about her career anymore. It was about justice for everyone who had been marginalized and discriminated against, about changing a toxic culture that had persisted for decades. As she drove home that night, Zara noticed a black sedan following at a discreet distance. The intimidation tactics were becoming more overt, but rather than frightening her, they only strengthened her determination. Atlantic Skyways had picked the wrong pilot to try to silence. The stack of bills on Zara's desk grew higher each week. Mortgage payment, car loans, utilities, health insurance premiums now that her coverage through Atlantic Skyways had been suspended. Without her captain's salary, their comfortable financial cushion was rapidly thinning. Anthony set his laptop beside the bills, his expression grim. My team lead called me in again today. They're restructuring, and my position is being reevaluated. Zara looked up sharply. They can't be that obvious. They don't need to be, Anthony replied. Tech companies restructure all the time. It's plausibly deniable, just like everything else they do. The strain was showing on both of them. 6 weeks had passed since Zara's suspension, and Atlantic Skyways was dragging out the investigation while simultaneously pressuring other coalition members. Michael Torres had been fired over a minor maintenance logging discrepancy that would normally warrant a simple correction. David Kim had been placed on performance review. Aisha Washington was suddenly facing scrutiny over crew assignments from years earlier. The coalition was fracturing under the pressure. 3 members had withdrawn completely, afraid of losing their livelihoods. Others had become hesitant to share new information, communicating only through secure channels and refusing in-person meetings. Zara stared out the window at the gray October sky, questioning for the first time if the fight was worth the mounting personal cost. She had always believed that standing up for what was right would ultimately prevail, that truth and justice would win out against discrimination and corruption. Now, watching her finances drain and her allies suffer, doubt crept in. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tanya Williams. Need to meet urgently, not safe at usual places. They met at a public library 30 miles from Atlanta, both taking circuitous routes to ensure they weren't followed. Tanya looked haggard, the stress evident in her face. I've been forced to resign, she said without preamble. They found out I provided documents to your coalition. I'm sorry, Zara said, genuinely remorseful for the consequences Tanya was facing. Tanya waved it off. I knew the risks, but I need to give you something before I go. They're escalating, beyond what you know. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of emails between Sullivan, the company's legal team, and several board members. They're not just building a case for termination anymore, Tanya explained. They're preparing to challenge your pilot's license with the FAA, claiming pattern of judgment issues and safety concerns. They're also considering a preemptive lawsuit against you for defamation and corporate espionage. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. Losing her job would be devastating. Losing her license would destroy her career permanently. They're creating a narrative that you stole confidential company information to damage Atlantic's reputation. Because of personal grievances over performance issues, Tanya continued. They've already planted stories with several industry publications questioning your qualifications and stability. Can they really do this? Zara asked, though she already knew the answer. They have the resources and connections to make it extremely difficult to fight, Tanya confirmed. This goes beyond Atlantic Skyways now. Sullivan has friends at other airlines, at the FAA, in the aviation press. They're closing ranks. That evening, Zara shared the new information with Anthony, watching his expression shift from concern to anger. This is beyond retaliation, he said. This is systematic destruction of your career and reputation. Maybe we should consider their settlement offer, Zara said quietly, voicing the thought that had been growing in her mind. Atlantic had recently approached her through intermediaries, suggesting a generous financial settlement if she would drop all claims and sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. Anthony studied her face. Is that what you really want? To let them win? To let this continue for the next black pilot who comes along? Before she could answer, a rock crashed through their living room window, showering glass across the floor. Taped to it was a note. Drop it or worse. The police took a report but were not optimistic about identifying the perpetrator. Unfortunately, without witnesses or security footage, this will be difficult to pursue, the officer explained with practiced detachment. Later that night, as they cleaned up the broken glass, Anthony received a call from his team lead. I'm sorry to do this over the phone, the voice said, but we've decided to eliminate your position effective immediately. You'll receive 2 weeks severance. The timing couldn't have been more deliberate. Atlantic Skyways was sending a clear message. We can hurt you beyond just your job. Do you think Zara should accept the settlement and protect what remains of her career and family security? Comment number 1, if you believe she should continue fighting despite the escalating personal costs. Or comment number 2 if you think sometimes the price of justice becomes too high. Like this video if you're inspired by those who stand against systemic discrimination, and subscribe to hear more stories of courage in the face of injustice. How far will Atlantic Skyways go to silence Zara? And is there any way she can still win this fight? Let's continue. That night, Zara hit her lowest point, sitting at her kitchen table surrounded by bills with her career in jeopardy and her husband newly unemployed because of her fight. The weight felt crushing. Was this justice worth the personal destruction it was causing? She pulled out the settlement offer Atlantic had sent through intermediaries. The money would solve their immediate financial concerns. The non-disclosure agreement would silence her permanently. But perhaps that was the price of survival in a system stacked against people like her. As she considered it, her phone rang. It was Michael Torres. They came for my family too, he said, his voice tight with anger. My son was expelled from his private school yesterday. Suddenly, they discovered violations of academic policy. The headmaster is golfing buddies with Sullivan. Michael, I'm so sorry, Zara began. No, he cut her off. I'm not calling for sympathy. I'm calling because we need to remember what we're fighting for. This isn't just about jobs or money. This is about dignity. About our children's future. If they can do this to us, with our education and positions, imagine what happens to those with less power. His words struck home. Zara looked at the settlement offer again, seeing it for what it truly was, not salvation, but capitulation. Accepting. It wouldn't just be giving up her fight, it would be abandoning everyone who had taken risks to stand with her, and everyone who would face similar discrimination in the future. She tore the offer in half, just as Anthony walked in. He looked at the torn papers and nodded slowly, understanding without words. They were in this fight to the end, whatever the cost. The next morning brought unexpected news. A whistleblower within Atlantic Skyways had provided recordings of an executive meeting to a national news outlet. The recordings featured James Sullivan explicitly discussing plans to remove minority pilots from premium routes because our high-value customers expect a certain type of pilot. The story didn't identify Zara by name, but it referenced a systematic campaign of retaliation against employees who raised discrimination concerns. Within hours, other news outlets picked up the story, and social media was buzzing with speculation and outrage. Atlantic Skyways issued a carefully worded statement denying any discriminatory policies and claiming the recordings were taken out of context during discussions about complex operational requirements. But the damage was done. The public narrative was shifting, and for the first time, Atlantic was on the defensive. For Zara and the coalition, it was the first ray of hope in weeks. The external pressure created an opportunity to act more boldly. The question now was how best to leverage this moment to maximum effect. The conference room in Yvonne Baker's law office buzzed with cautious energy. For the first time in weeks, the core coalition members had gathered in person, drawn by the momentum shift created by the leaked recordings. Zara stood at the whiteboard, mapping out their strategy. Atlantic is vulnerable right now, she explained. The public exposure has created pressure points we can exploit, but we need to move decisively before they regain control of the narrative. Anthony, who had unexpectedly found a new role at a startup founded by a former colleague sympathetic to their cause, had helped the coalition secure technical resources they desperately needed. We've established secure communications channels and backup storage for all our evidence, he reported. Even if they manage to compromise one source, we have redundancies. Yvonne outlined the legal strategy. We're preparing simultaneous filings with the EEOC, the Department of Transportation, and the FAA. Each filing addresses different aspects of Atlantic's discriminatory practices and retaliation. Michael Torres, still unemployed, but more committed than ever, had been coordinating with former Atlantic employees. We've secured testimonials from 23 former employees who experienced or witnessed discrimination. They're willing to go on record now that the story has broken publicly. David Kim, who had been placed on leave but not yet terminated, had conducted a comprehensive statistical analysis. The data is undeniable, he explained, displaying charts on his laptop. Across every department, every route category, every promotion cycle, minority employees are systematically disadvantaged. The disparities are far beyond what could occur by chance. Aisha Washington had taken the biggest risk, still actively employed while gathering crucial evidence. I've pulled the passenger satisfaction surveys for all pilots over the past 5 years, she reported. Zara's ratings are consistently in the top 10%, directly contradicting their claims about performance issues. The coalition had also connected with the National Aviation Equity Alliance, a civil rights organization focused on discrimination in the airline industry. Their director, Dr. Eleanor Phillips, had joined the meeting virtually. Atlantic Skyways isn't unique, Dr. Phillips explained. The entire industry has systemic issues, but this case represents an opportunity to create precedent and push for broader changes. We're prepared to provide resources, publicity, and political pressure. Richard Coleman, the senior white pilot who had supported Zara from the beginning, provided crucial intelligence. The board is split, he reported. Some members are concerned about legal liability and reputational damage. Others are standing firmly with Sullivan, believing they can weather this storm as they have previous discrimination claims. Together, they crafted a multi-pronged approach designed to hit Atlantic Skyways from multiple angles simultaneously, creating pressure they couldn't easily deflect or dismiss. First came the legal filings, meticulously documented and submitted to multiple regulatory agencies. Rather than a single large case that could be tied up in procedural delays, they filed specific complaints addressing different aspects of discrimination and retaliation, making it harder for Atlantic to mount a unified defense. Next, they implemented a strategic media campaign. Rather than releasing all their evidence at once, they worked with selected journalists to reveal new aspects of the discrimination in stages, keeping the story in the news cycle and preventing Atlantic from controlling the narrative. The National Aviation Equity Alliance launched a social media campaign using the hashtag #OurJusticeInTheSky, sharing stories from multiple airlines but highlighting the Atlantic Skyways case as emblematic of industry-wide issues. The hashtag began trending as current and former aviation employees across the country shared their own experiences of discrimination. Atlantic Skyways attempted to counter with their own media strategy, releasing Zara's performance reviews and simulator check results, selectively edited to suggest legitimate concerns. They planted stories questioning her qualifications and suggesting she was a disgruntled employee, manufacturing discrimination claims to cover for her own shortcomings. The coalition had anticipated this move. Richard Coleman publicly defended Zara's piloting skills, risking his own career by directly contradicting his employer. "In 38 years of flying, I've never seen a more skilled pilot than Zara Mitchell," he told aviation reporters. These manufactured performance issues began only after she raised legitimate concerns about discriminatory practices. As public pressure mounted, Atlantic Skyways' stock price began to decline. Financial analysts issued concerned reports about potential liability and reputational damage. Major corporate clients, sensitive to association with discrimination allegations, quietly began shifting some of their business to competitors. The turning point came when Aisha Washington took her biggest risk yet. Using her access as a supervisor, she obtained internal communications showing that Atlantic executives had specifically instructed scheduling to ensure that flights to certain destinations maintain appropriate flight deck image by avoiding assignment of minority pilots, particularly to routes serving predominantly white, wealthy areas. This evidence, combined with the statistical analysis and testimonials, painted a damning picture that became increasingly difficult for Atlantic to dismiss as misunderstanding or coincidence. The FAA announced a formal investigation into Atlantic's pilot assignment practices. The Department of Transportation began reviewing their compliance with anti-discrimination regulations for federal contractors. Sensing momentum, the coalition pushed harder. They compiled all their evidence into a comprehensive report titled Systematic Discrimination at Atlantic Skyways, a Case Study in Aviation Inequality. The report was simultaneously submitted to regulatory agencies, provided to media outlets, and shared with major Atlantic Skyways shareholders. The airline's legal team responded with an aggressive counterattack. They sent Zara a formal letter, offering a substantial settlement in exchange for her dropping all claims and signing a lifetime non-disclosure agreement. The offer was significantly larger than their previous proposal, reflecting their growing concern. When Zara declined, they escalated to threats. Their attorneys warned that they were preparing a lawsuit against her for defamation, tortious interference with business relationships, and misappropriation of confidential information. They threatened to pursue not just Zara, but everyone who had assisted her, including Anthony and all coalition members. The coalition had prepared for this too. Yvonne Baker responded with a detailed letter outlining the extensive evidence of discrimination and retaliation, noting that truth is an absolute defense against defamation claims, and making it clear that any such lawsuit would only result in more damaging information becoming public through the discovery process. As the pressure continued to build, Atlantic Skyways' board of directors called an emergency meeting. The company was facing a multi-front crisis: regulatory investigations, media scrutiny, customer concerns, and shareholder unrest. Something had to give. The sleek conference room at Atlantic Skyways headquarters vibrated with tension. Around the polished mahogany table sat the board of directors, legal counsel, and key executives, including James Sullivan. The quarterly financial report displayed on the screen showed the impact of the growing scandal: stock down 18%, booking rates declining, corporate contracts under review. "This situation is becoming untenable," said Eleanor Harrington, one of the newer board members with a background in crisis management. The Mitchell case is gaining traction across multiple media outlets. It's no longer just an HR issue, it's becoming a major liability. Sullivan leaned forward, his usual confidence strained but still present. We've weathered discrimination claims before. Our legal team is preparing a robust defense, and our PR strategy is countering the most damaging allegations. The difference, Harrington responded sharply, is that previous claims weren't supported by recordings of executives explicitly discussing discriminatory practices. They didn't have statistical evidence spanning 15 years. And they certainly didn't have the backing of civil rights organizations and industry whistleblowers. The general counsel cleared his throat. I should inform the board that we've received notice of a formal FAA investigation into our pilot assignment practices. Additionally, 3 of our largest corporate clients have requested meetings to discuss the allegations before renewing their GAU contracts. A heavy silence fell over the room. For the first time, the full implications of the crisis were becoming clear to everyone present. This wasn't going to be resolved with the usual combination of legal maneuvering, PR spin, and waiting for public attention to move elsewhere. What are our options? Asked the board chair. We've offered Captain Mitchell a substantial settlement, Sullivan replied. She's declined. Perhaps, suggested another board member, we should consider more fundamental changes to address the underlying issues rather than simply trying to silence one complainant. Sullivan's face hardened. These allegations are overblown. Adjusting our scheduling to meet customer expectations isn't discrimination. It's good business. Is it good business to be known as an airline that systematically excludes qualified pilots based on race? Harrington challenged. Is it good business to be under federal investigation? Is it good business to lose millions in market value because we can't adapt to modern expectations of fairness and equity? Meanwhile, Zara was preparing for her most public move yet. After careful consideration, she had agreed to an exclusive television interview with a respected national news program. Sitting in the green room before the broadcast, she felt a surprising calm. The path to this moment had been arduous and costly, but she was clear about her purpose. We're on in 5 minutes, Captain Mitchell, a production assistant informed her. The interview was comprehensive and powerful. Zara presented her evidence methodically, sharing her personal experiences while connecting them to the broader pattern of discrimination at Atlantic Skyways. She was neither angry nor emotional, but resolute and articulate, her military training evident in her composed demeanor. This isn't about one pilot or one airline, she explained. This is about an industry that has systematically excluded qualified professionals based on race and gender, hiding behind operational excuses while maintaining discriminatory practices. When asked about the personal cost of her stand, Zara was candid. My husband lost his job. We've received threats. My career has been damaged, but I keep thinking about all the qualified people who never got the chance to fly because they didn't fit someone's image of what a pilot should look like. Their loss is immeasurable, and that's what this fight is really about. The interview resonated widely, generating extensive social media discussion and news coverage. The hashtag #IflyWithZara began trending, with passengers posting that they would choose airlines with demonstrated commitment to diversity and equal opportunity. The pressure on Atlantic Skyways intensified. Civil rights organizations called for boycotts. Institutional investors issued statements of concern about governance and risk management. Current and former employees from multiple airlines began coming forward with similar stories, suggesting the problem extended throughout the industry. As public scrutiny increased, internal documents continued to leak from Atlantic Skyways, including emails where executives discussed minority pilots as diversity hires, regardless of their qualifications, and meeting minutes where concerns about too many minority pilots on premium routes were explicitly discussed. A particularly damaging recording emerged of Sullivan telling other executives, "Let's be realistic. Our premium clients from certain parts of the country expect to see a certain type of person when they walk into the cockpit. It's not racism. It's customer service." Atlantic Skyways attempted to control the damage by announcing a new diversity initiative and the formation of an internal review committee. The response was widely criticized as insufficient and insincere, particularly as Sullivan remained the public face of the company's response. the board of directors reconvened an emergency session, this time without Sullivan or other executives present. The discussion was frank and difficult, acknowledging that the company faced not just a PR problem, but a fundamental failure of leadership and culture. "We have two choices," said Harrington. "We can fight this to the bitter end, likely losing in court, destroying our reputation, and facing significant financial penalties. Or we can take decisive action to acknowledge past failures and implement genuine change." After hours of debate, the board reached a decision. They would take the unprecedented step of removing James Sullivan and several other key executives, publicly acknowledging the discriminatory practices, and engaging in good faith negotiations with Zara and other affected employees. When Sullivan was informed of the decision, his reaction was predictable. "This is corporate suicide," he argued. "You're admitting guilt and opening us to massive liability." "No," responded the board chair firmly. "This is corporate survival. The world has changed, James. What was tolerated in the past is no longer acceptable, legally or morally. Either we change with it, or we don't survive at all." The next day, Atlantic Skyways issued a statement announcing Sullivan's resignation and the appointment of an interim leadership team. They acknowledged serious concerns about our past practices and committed to a comprehensive external review of their hiring, promotion, and assignment policies. For Zara and the coalition, it was a significant victory, but only the beginning of the real work. The challenge now was to ensure that this moment of accountability led to genuine, lasting change, rather than superficial adjustments designed to weather the immediate crisis. As the coalition prepared for negotiations with Atlantic Skyways' new leadership, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The costs had been enormous, but so was the potential impact of their stand. This wasn't just about one airline or one pilot. It was about challenging a system that had marginalized qualified professionals for generations based on race and gender. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, real change seemed possible. Atlantic Skyways would never be the same again, and neither would the industry it represented. 6 months later, Captain Zara Mitchell stood in the cockpit of an Airbus A350, preparing for departure from Atlanta to Paris. Her hands moved with practiced precision across the controls as she completed her pre-flight checks, the 4 gold stripes on her uniform catching the morning light streaming through the windshield. "Captain Mitchell, all passengers are boarded and secured," the lead flight attendant reported. "We're ready when you are." "Thank you, Lisa," Zara replied with a smile. "Let's give them a smooth ride to Paris." As Zara guided the massive aircraft toward the runway, she reflected on the extraordinary changes of the past half-year. Atlantic Skyways had undergone a complete transformation, starting at the top. James Sullivan and 5 other executives had been removed, replaced by leadership committed to creating an equitable workplace. The board had been restructured to include members with backgrounds in civil rights and organizational culture. But the changes went far beyond personnel. A comprehensive audit of Atlantic's hiring, promotion, and assignment practices had revealed systematic discrimination across multiple departments. In response, the company had implemented new, transparent systems for route assignments based on objective criteria like experience, performance, and seniority. An independent oversight committee reviewed all promotion decisions to ensure fairness. Tanya Williams had returned to head a strengthened HR department with explicit authority to investigate discrimination complaints without executive interference. Michael Torres had been reinstated as maintenance supervisor with back pay and a promotion. David Kim now led a new data analytics team specifically tasked with monitoring equity metrics across all departments. Most significantly, Atlantic Skyways had established the Aviation Equity Initiative, an industry-wide effort to address discrimination throughout commercial aviation. The initiative included scholarship programs for minority pilots, mentorship, opportunities, and best practices for ensuring fair treatment, regardless of race or gender. Several other airlines had joined the effort, recognizing that the issues exposed at Atlantic existed throughout the industry. For Zara personally, the journey had been both vindicating and humbling. The settlement she had negotiated included not just reinstatement and back pay, but a leadership role in developing new training programs for pilots and executives alike. Rather than silencing her with a non-disclosure agreement, Atlantic had asked her to speak openly about her experiences as part of their commitment to transparency and change. Using a portion of her settlement, Zara had established the Mitchell Flight Academy, a scholarship program for minority youth interested in aviation careers. The program's first class included 15 students who might otherwise never have had the opportunity to pursue their dreams of flying. In a gesture of particular significance, Atlantic Skyways had installed a display in their headquarters lobby, featuring the medal of Zara's grandfather, William Mitchell, and other Tuskegee airmen, acknowledging the long history of excellent black pilots who had served despite discrimination. As Zara received clearance for takeoff, First Officer Jason Parker, a young white pilot, turned to her. "It's an honor to fly with you, Captain Mitchell. What you did changed everything for the better." Zara nodded, appreciating the sentiment, but knowing the work was far from complete. "We've made progress, but there's still a long way to go." The aircraft accelerated down the runway and lifted smoothly into the morning sky, climbing steadily above the clouds. Zara felt the familiar thrill of flight, the pure joy of commanding such a magnificent machine that had drawn her to aviation since childhood. On this particular flight, seated in first class was Richard Coleman, recently retired and now serving as director of Atlantic's new pilot training program. His early support for Zara had cost him professionally in the short term, but ultimately placed him in a position to help reshape the airline's culture for future generations. Also on board was a young black woman, a college sophomore named Tiana Johnson, traveling to Paris as part of a study abroad program. Unknown to her, she was sitting in a cabin served by an airline fundamentally transformed by Zara's courage, flying in an aircraft captained by a woman who had refused to wait outside when told her presence wasn't wanted. That evening, as passengers settled in for the transatlantic crossing, Zara caught her reflection in the cockpit window. She thought about her grandfather and all the pilots who had come before her, fighting not just for the right to fly, but for the dignity of being judged by their skills rather than their skin color. She thought about the young people who would enter aviation in the years to come, facing fewer barriers because of the stands taken today. The journey had been difficult and costly, but necessary. Sometimes justice required more than patience. It required courage to challenge entrenched systems regardless of personal risk. Atlantic Skyways had asked her to wait outside, never expecting that she would instead walk boldly through the door and change the entire company from within. As the aircraft cruised smoothly at 39,000 feet, Zara allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. The sky belonged to everyone with the skill and dedication to master it. And now, because she had refused to accept discrimination, a little more of that sky was open to all who deserved to fly. What do you think about Zara's journey and the transformation she helped create? Have you ever stood up against discrimination, even when it was difficult? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of courage and persistence inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice and transformation. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for what's right. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the greatest changes begin when someone refuses to wait outside. Zara Mitchell's story teaches us that systemic change requires both courage and strategy. While discrimination thrives in silence, it cannot survive prolonged exposure. One person with unwavering determination can spark a movement that transforms entire industries. The most powerful tool against discrimination isn't just individual bravery, it's collective action. When Zara shifted from fighting alone to building a coalition, she multiplied her impact. Evidence matters too. Meticulous documentation transformed subjective experiences into undeniable patterns that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence. This story also highlights the importance of allies from all backgrounds. Richard Coleman's support demonstrated that fighting discrimination isn't just the responsibility of those experiencing it. It's everyone's moral obligation. Perhaps most importantly, Zara's journey shows that real change requires addressing root causes, not just symptoms. Atlantic Skyways couldn't solve its problems with superficial diversity initiatives. It needed fundamental restructuring of power, accountability, and culture. True justice isn't achieved through quick settlements that maintain secrecy, but through transparent transformation that prevents future harm. When we refuse to wait outside, we create space for everyone to belong inside. Has a moment of discrimination ever changed the course of your life? Captain Zara Mitchell turned being told to wait outside into a movement that transformed an entire airline. Share your own turning point moment in the comments below. When did you decide enough was enough? If you believe that qualified professionals deserve equal opportunities regardless of their race or gender, hit that like button to help this story reach more people who need to hear it. The more visibility these experiences receive, the harder they are to ignore. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of everyday heroes who refuse to accept discrimination as just the way things are. Each week, we showcase individuals who, like Zara, had the courage to document, organize, and fight back against systemic injustice. Don't keep this message to yourself. Share this video with someone who might be experiencing workplace discrimination right now. Sometimes all it takes is one story to help someone realize they're not alone and that change is possible. Thank you for watching and being part of a community that believes in justice, equality, and the power of standing up for what's right. Remember, transformation begins when we refuse to wait outside the rooms where decisions are made. Instead, we walk in and change them from within.